So the entire POE 2 community is catching on to something I said 3 weeks ago. And today I want to look at POE 2 and POE 1's best player to see what he has to say on the issue. Let's get into it. Here we have the ups and downs of POE 2 by Ben. Check him out on YouTube.
I don't feel like I have the energy right now, but whenever I do want to actually give a proper like POE 2 talk, I can give you a preview of what the first like 5 words are going to be. I don't understand why POE 2 exists. That's where it started. You know what? Maybe I do have the energy. Maybe I do. Like the original scope for POE 2 was new campaign, new class, new ascendancies, new gems, and a new gem system, right? Like that was the original scope, but shared endgame. And when we think about POE 2, what is good, it is exclusively the things that I just said. It's the campaign. Like the one single thing that POE 2 actually does better than the first game is the new player experience in the campaign. It is.
We're in complete agreement with this. I said as much in my original video, but I didn't elaborate on how much better the new player experience is getting into POE 2 as compared to what it currently is for POE 1. I believe he's going to dive into it in a second, so I guess I'm not even going to try to elaborate too much further before hearing his explanation.
So much fucking better. Like this game's campaign experience is fucking dog shit if you don't know what's happening. Like vendors use like 9 different currencies.
Absolutely.
To buy things, gems, or 9 different
That's okay.
currencies. Like, it sucks. It's really bad. Whereas
that's not even the least of it. Let's be super clear. POE 1 has so many issues telegraphing its basic mechanics. Such information as more versus increased, such information as like your total pool and percentage scaling shown just anywhere on your character sheet for a certain damage type. Like there are so many different quality of life features that it's exhausting listing all of them or even thinking about them because you have to like, I actually should start a list. I'm going to start a list. Okay. I might even put a list on screen for you right now.
In POE 2, like the uncut skill gems and the like vendors all being gold, it's so much easier to like follow and understand what's happening.
For sure.
The like hand holding of the gem system for recommended stuff, even though often it's not the best, is way better than here's a window with 95 gems in it, good fucking luck. The way the game kind of pushes you into these like archetypes of like lightning versus whatever else, like it all kind of it's just way easier. The game is way easier to play if you don't know what's happening. And that's really good.
That's true, by the way. Hard agree on that statement. If you don't know what you're doing, and that's such a good way of demonstrating or just of explaining this from an overhead view if you've never played POE 2. If you've never played POE 2 and you're watching this video or Ben's video, and you were daunted, especially by POE 1, I highly recommend you play POE 2. If you were daunted by the like difficulty or the different ways that you need to skill your character, that kind of stuff. If you were daunted by what seemed to be complexity in POE 1, I will say POE 2 does a fairly decent job. POE 2 does a decent enough job of inundating new players into its systems, similar to Last Epoch. If you have played that game, you can kind of play that game as a new player, commit to one archetype, even if it's some janky archetype that isn't considered meta. And as long as you stick to it, continue scaling your damage in ways that are fairly obvious, but like still, you know, you just play your character basically. It's one of those games where you can pick it up, play it, completely solo self-found, get to endgame with like a moderate amount of information, with no prior information and just a moderate amount of gamer intuition to carry you through. POE 2's experience for that breaks down in endgame. So, and I think he's going to talk about that.
And the moment you leave Act 3, or really Act 6 maybe, and start mapping, it just is bad. Like if I think about every single change from the first game to the second game, I almost can't think of a single positive change when it comes to actual in-game content.
They feel very opposite. They feel like in POE 1, you're trying to skip past the campaign as quickly as possible because you know what you're doing and you're interested in the meat, the juiciness of its rich and vast endgame systems that you get to experience, that you first of all get to interact with each individually and then all together at once as they all kind of play in together and you're fleshing out you're getting your anoint, you're getting like eldritch implicits, you're getting eldritch currency and certain different currencies to help you roll gear. All of these different systems feed into the power progression of your character. It feels so good. It's like the best power fantasy in any game I've ever played. POE 2 does not have that system for endgame yet, I guess. I can say yet for that because, yeah, sure, it is in early access. We're going to get leaks. We're going to get permanent content added to the game. That is a legitimate area where people can say, well, the endgame is going to get fleshed out. Sure, I understand it's going to get fleshed out, but I don't want to play it until then. You know, it's like when, you know, it's like, until that happens, I just would rather play POE 1.
Like, the change from killing a map boss to killing all rares, who wants that? Like, every time I hit tab and scroll through a map trying to find the rare that's hiding in the corner to kill to get progress, like, it's just bad.
Very, very stupid system. I don't know why did they choose rares to make your completion for maps? It should just be map. Like, map bosses are one of the only things keeping me compelled to PoE 2's Endgame, right? Is when you get into a map, you're just sitting there going on like long, what seems like endless killing missions until finally you roll a map with a map boss, and then you get a little bit of a like, a little bit of exhilaration, a little bit like on your seat, like, oh crap, like the map bosses are the most interesting part of PoE 2. I don't know why they made it so that you don't ever fight a map boss.
In every map, why? Map bosses are cool. They're fun. Why can I go an hour without fighting one sometimes? It just makes no sense. Towers? Jesus Christ. Sections got depreciated because they were tedious, and sections are like 1,000 times better than towers. Map layouts? Like, the worst PoE 1 map layout is S+ in PoE 2. I didn't even think it was possible to design map layouts that are so unfun. And checkpoints got added? Jesus, man. Fucking checkpoints. The moment people started asking for checkpoints in maps, that should have been infinite fucking red flags. Definitely. Exploding out of every single corner. If
these are all really good points.
Layouts are so dog shit that players want checkpoints, that needs to be like a complete redesign of how layouts work. It's like, how are 80% of layouts like unrunnable? Like fucking Mire, like Augury, like the way loot works in the end game, 95% of all items drop from rare monsters. Every single trash monster, there's no reason to kill it except for experience. It won't drop loot. It will never drop an item that matters. And like the breach problem as well, like 90% of all loot comes from breaches. And like so much of the shit is like, oh, you can hand me the way with, oh, it's early access. But is it really? Like, I mean, to me, when I hear like early access / beta, what I think is this is an unfinished game that's going to be changed a lot constantly. It's been 2 months. What's changed? What's fucking changed?
I'm going to be fair and say that I actually do think a fair number of the like really like he mentioned breach being one of the few things that poops out money. I think that's going to get adjusted, and I think it's going to, like, there's some obvious abuse things that I do think I trust GGG well enough to like take care of it. There's enough wrong with PoE 2's endgame under the hood that it does cause serious concern, but I'm pretty convinced all of this stuff will change. It's just going to take some time.
There's not even balance changes happening until resets come out.
Yep.
Like, with new
which is just why we got to stop playing, guys. We just got to stop playing and force them to change the game. It's simple as that. I know GGG will do it. They just have their vision. We need to show them, hey, like, this is not the vision that we want, and we're the people that play the game, and you guys are the ones that make the game. Don't get that twisted. Like, you guys aren't making the game so you can play it, right? You guys are making it so that we can play it and pay you money, so you should make the game for us. And I'm that's my perspective on it. Like, we don't need to focus too much on
as if it's a fully released game. I don't fucking get it, man. I don't get it. If PoE 2 stayed with its original scope of new campaign, new gym system, shared endgame, God, it would have been so fucking sick. But like, that endgame, it's not even like, oh, it's just needs time to cook. It's just like every single change feels like it's just a change because it needed to be different than the first game. But I don't understand.
I agree with that 100%. I'm gonna roll back. The PoE 2 could have or should have just been a big expansion where we revamp the end game, or sorry, we revamped the campaign for PoE 1, all new graphics, crap ton of new skill gems. Here's a dodge roll, I guess, and everything else is the same. I don't know about like how would they do that with like flasks and stuff. They need to make they need to make some substantial changes, and this is obviously not the world we're living in, and so you could argue it's not really worth speculating. But yeah, just imagine for a second the world we could have lived in, where this was just one big expansion and they didn't change so much. They just addressed how boring the campaign was, and then they gave us a bunch of new content in gameplay. And instead of like changing so much, it was like, here's a bunch of new skill gems, here's new graphics, here's a new way to interact with bosses. Maybe all bosses are going to be more exhilarating. Here's dodge roll, and just like work more to incorporate PoE 1 systems into PoE 2 rather than rewrite everything from the ground up.
Every single
I agree
change
with that sentiment.
Feels like it's just a change because it needed to be different than the first game.
Yes.
But I don't understand how it's better. And the phrase meaningful combat, I swear to God, I've heard the phrase meaningful combat 100 times in the last like 2 years. PoE 2 has the most meaningless combat of any single RPG I've ever
Very
played.
true. So many people they confuse this as, I have meaningful combat in PoE 2 now, unlike in any other ARPG, because it takes me 5 minutes to kill a white pack. Like, tedium is not complexity. Something being tedious does not necessarily mean that it's complex. It often just means, literally, just mean by definition of tedious, right? We can look this up. It's long, slow, or dull. It's like the quite literally, it's not the exact opposite of complex, but there's definitely there's some huge differences between the words tedious and complex. I feel like people confuse the two words very often.
It doesn't
when
exist.
It comes to
There is no
PoE2
combat. Every single build, you use one button, you right click, the entire screen explodes. Like, what the fuck? Why?
Yes, and he's talking about meta builds. There's a lot of like, I mean, if you're not playing something meta in PoE2, then you are pushing a lot of buttons, getting very little dopamine as you watch their health bars go lower and lower. Maybe I'm just exposing how much worse I am at the game than Ben is, sure. But either way, Ben's identifying a problem in PoE2's endgame where if you're playing a meta build, you're still blowing up everything just like you are in PoE1. So what's the point? How meaningfully different is it from PoE1?
Why is that a thing? Why is that still a thing 2 months
build.
later? Like, people are going to be so used to that when they finally take it away, there's going to be so much complaining. And it is just
that is a deep point. I know I keep pausing, but at the same time, this is a reaction. I'm truly reacting to the video. That is such a very good point that we don't talk about enough. What happens when they do change all of this now, when eventually they realize the player base is dwindling, they don't like the end game, we have to change it, and then we start experiencing FOMO because they didn't take enough liberties in early access. Genuinely wish this was talked about more to deflate the criticism that it's just early access, bro. You should be expecting changes. And it's like, well, okay, then where are the changes, right? It's early access. Where's the changes? If they're not going to change anything, then if they're not going to change anything and you're going to continue to say it's early access that they need to change things, then we're living in like bizarro world.
So boring. Like, killing monsters in that game is so boring because you don't do anything. Even when I tried to like not do that kind of setup, like and intentionally skipped heralds on crossbows, it's the same thing. You press galvanic arrow, the entire screen explodes. Even this character falls into the category of one button builds. Like, this
Power Siphon, Locust Mines.
One button build in Path of Exile 1 to clear,
I would know all about that.
An expedition. Before I had the chest, I would like Endure and Cry, dodge monster abilities with Shield Charge and Frostbank, right click, press Val Grace as a defensive button whenever I felt like it, drop Flame Walls on targets to buff my shit and do more damage, and Sniper Smart and the tanky bears in there. In Path of Exile 2, you right click. I don't know. I feel like splitting the game, like maybe splitting the games has saved Path of Exile 1 from having a bunch of changes that fucked it up, but like, goddamn, dude, that endgame is like, it's not even like, oh, it just needs time. It's just doomed. It's fucking doomed, man. I'm so doomer pilled on that endgame. I don't know. Campaign's good. Campaign's fun. Everything after the campaign, why? It's intelligent to go full nuke. Have you played a bad build in PoE2 yet? Because I have.
Bro.
I have. That's
Talk
how I
about
started
it.
PoE2. Was in multiple bad melee builds. It's like Titan, if you play it properly, is really good. If you do Herald Abuse, you just one-shot the screen easily.
Yeah,
but like
I've
playing actual bad melee builds, the pushy, no phasing system genuinely made me almost quit the game on day 3.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like the
Jesus,
clunkiest,
that's early. I didn't play melee, I'll be fair.
I've ever experienced.
I didn't play melee for more than 5, like, I probably put 30 minutes into a monk before I put it down. Not to say that monk is underpowered. He's playing Titan, but I'm just saying, like, I did not mess around with early game monk melee too much.
Good builds. The thing with Path of Exile 1, when you get to a character that's like fucking just zoomer cracked, completely broken, the game is still like the game keeps getting more and more fun because there's one super important thing you can do in this game, and that is scale speed. Like, when it comes to how a character functions in ARPGs, there's like 3 categories. There's defense, offense, and speed. And this game, you are constantly being just like thrown into scenarios where you're choosing one of the 3. And anytime you choose one, the other 2 suffer a little bit. In PoE 2, it took me like, by level 90, like my Titan would right click and one shot the whole screen. And from that point forward, there's nothing that I could ever do to improve the character. I could play for 1,000.
Immediately sound like I'm pushing back on Ben here, but we knew this was the case, right? They stated this from the get-go, that GGG was trying to slow down PoE2. We knew that we were going to lose a substantial degree of scaling and personal player expression with speed as a gameplay mechanic that we could push. But to give a lot back to Ben immediately, I think what he's trying to say here is like we didn't gain anything in place of that. It feels like they slowed the game down significantly. We're not gaslit by that fact. We knew that they would slow the game down significantly, but it was now it feels like a punishment. It feels like we slowed the game down significantly. We didn't make combat any more engaging. We just made it more tedious. And for what? Like, you're making significantly less loot unless you're exploiting broken builds and broken farming. Like, unless you're breaking the game, you're not really having fun. You're just having a worse experience than it could be in any other ARPG, because we had this vision of what if we made everything slower and gave less loot and made things seem more meaningful in the pursuit of grit, intention, quality of life, and modernity be damned, right? Like, it feels like we took one big step back in ARPG fundamentals to go to Diablo 2 for a bit. And it's like, hey, what if we had all these sluggish mechanics and gameplay that feels like it's, you know, straight out of the 90s. I don't know. I feel I feel very in touch with what he's saying here, but I don't know if I'm coming at it in a totally different direction that he would not necessarily agree with.
1,000 hours, it would never get better unless I like migrated to Trade League and bought Temporalis, because there's no way to invest in speed except one dumbass unique item. Oh, I didn't even talk about crafting. Yeah. Holy shit. That was like a 10-minute rant. I didn't talk about crafting. My god. I didn't even talk about crafting. Holy shit. That was like a 10-minute rant. I didn't talk about crafting. My god. Gear acquisition. What the fuck? Do I need to... I don't know if I even want to bother. Like, fuck me. Long before PoE 2 came out, we had to talk about why other ARPGs suck compared to Path of Exile 1. Like, one defining factor that was super important to me. If the only way to get gear is to kill a monster and hope it drops a good item, that's really bad. That's really, really, really bad. And that was like D3's problem. That kind of became D4's problem as well. Like, that's not interesting. And PoE 1 has like 8 systems that are, you know, that all are good at their own individual crafting thing. Like essences, harvest, delve, metacrafting, scour being all things accommodating right now. Like, there's so many different things, and they're all good.
It's a lot of, there's other mechanics that you can abuse to gamble for items, especially early on in the league, that are actually pretty powerful. You could abuse like heist to get a 6 link. You could abuse things like I know I was using ritual to get incredibly broken items. It felt like in PoE 1, you always had some decision that you could make, especially with the introduction of div. I'm now just going to glaze PoE 1s. And you always have an option to do a thing that will progress your account in a direction, and you feel that way no matter what decision you're making, no matter what activity you're participating in. And yeah, at the end of the day, you could argue it's all just the same, killing mobs, but it really isn't. There's like enough gameplay variety between Path of Exile 1's gameplay systems, especially if you're engaging with things like Delve. But even things like Ritual or Blight are known to have your character stand still in an area and like deal with the mobs around you, and that has like gameplay implications, right? Maybe you're playing a build. Literally, we would talk about the end, like as we'd get towards later and later patches, 3.17, 3.18, right? Post 3.15 nerfs, post 3.19 nerfs again. It started to get to the point where people would recommend builds for certain farming strategies, and I always felt that was a very unique aspect of Path of Exile that most other ARPGs don't share. The emphasis on choosing the right farming strategy for your build, because, you know, you want to play efficiently, but also, you know, the game has that much depth that it allows you to spec out your character for different strategies, not just to farm, but like to engage with. I thought that was I think that's an interesting layer of PoE 1.
For different items. And then also in the early game, like day 1, day 2, first 20, 30 hours, like you wear shit you ID'd off the ground. Like that has a place too, but it just gets outscaled, which I think is good. Every single map that I run in PoE 2, I have to pick up every single base type of every single item that I could ever wear, put them all in a quad tab, and then eventually when I get enough, I alch them all, / like augment, transmute, regal, whatever, and then 3-to-1 them in the most like tedious fucking clunky way ever. Like the 3-to-1 thing, instead of being a vendor, like the whole vendoring getting split up into like 6 different systems is one of those changes that's the exact same as the well. It is thematically good. It makes sense. In universe, lore-wise, it's good. But when I'm playing the game, I don't care about that. I care about fun. And if I want to turn 21 necrotic armors into 7 rare necrotic armors, I'd rather just vendor all of them at once. I mean, necrotic armors you can't do because, you know, they don't really fit in the window. But like with smaller things, like if I have 40 breach rings, I could just vendor 40 of them and get back like 16 rares. But instead, it's like I'm gonna spend 2 minutes doing a little 3-to-1 fucking thing with an animation. It's like cool, it looks cool, but like it's so tedious. Tedious is like the key word for everything regarding the endgame mapping and whatnot. Like I do a map, I leave, I scrap certain things based on if they have quality or sockets. I maybe disenchant if I need regal shards. I vendor if not, but only vendor bad bases that I picked up. Good.
He's kind of highlighting it here by describing it, but this process is very painful and tedious. Like I never more have I wanted the whole weight theory of GGG's like vision, the like player weight thing to just go away. Then when I leave a map in PoE 2 and go to like do the ritual that you have of leave a map and go vendor your stuff, go get another map, you don't roll it, hopefully you're pre-rolling maps, but even that's more annoying in PoE 2. It feels like PoE 2's semblance of quality of life went totally out the drain when it came to interacting with its systems in the end game. Tedium exists not just in the gameplay, but in its systems. He's going to explain that, I'm sure.
Into a certain quad tab, and there's no affinities for any of this, and there never will be.
Yes, He's highlighting the need to filter out certain things. I think GGG wanted to add this. They wanted to add more emphasis to all the loot we're picking up and give you reasons to want to sort it all. Hey, we want to give bases more utility, so you're actually picking them up. You find a white item on the ground, it's actually like a meaningful thing because there's no scour orbs in the game. Well, this leads to me having to pick up every white base that I find that I need to craft on if I don't have a completed weapon yet. That only applies if you're playing solo self-found. Never mind trade for a second, where you're constantly picking up valuable bases because they're just valuable loot. And there's some, like, I can be fair, there's some usefulness to that, like, oh, bases have value. I praised this in one of my videos. You know, it's cool that whites have value now. But what this leads to is me picking up a lot more items per map, and then when I leave them, there's no simple system to get them into the tab that they need to go to. It's just all manual tedium, so it involves just a lot of out of direct gameplay. You could argue, well, you're still interacting with its systems, you're still playing the game. Yeah, but I'm not doing the thing I really want to do, you know? And it's busy work that feels like it should in some way be automated at this point with how annoying it's becoming. I'm pausing too much. He did a good job. He was doing a good job of explaining it.
Maybe disenchant if I need Regal Shards. I
Go
vendor
back a
if
bit.
not. But only vendor bad bases that I picked up. Good bases have to go into a certain quad tab, and there's no affinities for any of this, and there never will be because you can't really set them up that way. And then you go back to your main quad tab to dump in all of your other shit, and it's like there's just like so much shit. Like, one of the best things about this game in the end game is when you reach a point where you stop picking up 6 sockets, you've outskilled rare items off the ground, and you leave.
And you turn your loot filter to uber strict.
Or the map, you dump into your quad tab. 90% of your loot is going into affinity tabs.
Yeah.
You put it in the next map, you go. You can just grind.
Yes.
And map prepping.
Yes.
Map prepping. Holy, like I'm currently at like the worst
Talk about
part of Path of Exile 1 map prepping, which is I'm still doing blue maps. My sustain isn't good enough to
Using
bulk
solo
roll,
self-found.
and it's still like way nicer because
It's
I don't have
way
that horrendous
easier.
fucking Atlas.
I know exactly the stage in his player progression where he's talking about he's not ready to just do super juiced red maps, and so he's kind of feeling, he's like, I hate that feeling of like I can't sustain the red maps that I'm running because I have to roll them magic. But this isn't that tedious to do. It's just like I mean, you could argue this is just something that we're familiar with, that we're okay with, and we see it in PoE 2 as something that's different that we're not okay with. You could, I'm gonna give you, I'll play devil's advocate. That's your counter argument to what Ben's saying and what I'm about to piggyback on his argument for. But I argue differently. I think this is so much easier to just get a bunch of, first of all, you can bulk move them so much simpler. Waystones, there's something weird with like control clicking them into map tabs and rolling them. It's just so much less, it's more cumbersome to roll them and interact with the map in your tabs than it is in PoE 1.
I can run maps that I want to run when I want to run them. I can roll them bulk like 20 in advance and then just grab all 20.
It's because of the map, the big over map that they have, that like with the way that they did Endgame in the last Epoch system. Originally, I was super hyped for it. I was like, oh, this is cool. This is like a map that it's not just endlessly running maps without any sense of real overall meta progression. But even PoE 1 solved that with the Atlas. In PoE 2, it's like, here's a different Atlas that has a bunch of nodes that connect with each other, and this leads you to wanting to be strategic about the maps that you put in. What that leads you to doing is spending a lot more time out of gameplay thinking about things like this, thinking about its systems, and that, you know, can create a tedious gameplay loop when you're doing it all the time. And you just want to do
inventory and just fucking blast on the Atlas pass.
You just want to blast.
You have 30 points, and they all say you drop more loot. Like they all say you drop 1% more loot.
They all feel very samey. I agree with you. You can specialize a little bit into different mechanics, but they all feel so samey.
It's one of the things where like that will naturally get fixed as more stuff gets added to the game.
I thought that too.
Like that's one of the things you can kind of hand wave away with like, oh, it's EA. Like so much of it is like it's not like the game is just lacking content.
I disagree with him on this though. I genuinely stand by my original criticism video, even though it was so disliked, because I have faith in GGG. I know this game is going to get way better in a year. You guys didn't know this. I have another channel where I suck GGG off, doing like reaction videos and RuneScape stuff. Like I literally shill for GGG.
Yo, and the game developers, like a good like literally they meet every expectation, and they even go above and beyond. This is like grinding your game studio. Like unironically, this is like the best gaming studio.
I need to get an eye track constantly. This is by far the best gaming company that I've ever. I've never dealt with them. They don't even know who the fuck I am. I'm a pawn scum. like this game. I'm passionate about PoE 1. I'm passionate about PoE 2. I genuinely do like this game, and I'm so confident GGG is going to get it right. I think he's wrong here if he's going to sit here and say, like, what more can they change? They're hearing these criticisms loud and clear. Trust me, you're the best player in the game. They've invited you out to multiple events. Have a little bit of faith in these guys. I mean, I know PoE 2 is going to get way better over the next year, but it definitely needs it.
That's not the problem. Like, most of it is like very intentional choices that are like neat, that look good, but when it comes to actually playing the game, it's not fun. It just feels so fucking tedious.
But hey, just like Arch Nem, gotta teach them, gotta condition them. Hey, GGG, we don't like this gameplay decision. Remember who you're developing for.
It doesn't know what it wants to be. That's where I feel like the gem system currently is. I feel like the gem system doesn't know what it wants to be. Originally, gems were going to be not damage multipliers. Like, supports were not going to be damage multipliers. But then they made them damage multipliers, and then they added a 1 support gem limit, which just feels really weird. Like, I don't like it at all, where it currently is. I feel like either of the other options are better than what it currently is. It's in this, like, weird, like, halfway point, where, like, making it so there's no damage multipliers on supports and it's all utility could be a thing that could feel good if it was done right. And just keeping the...
Actually, this is another thing I kind of disagree with him on. I think they've done support gems a lot better. I think they need to keep going in the direction that they are going, where support gems are a lot more conditional and a lot more like you are definitely thinking about the decision. Like, you're committed to a fire build if you're using something like fire infusion. You're not playing a tri-elemental damage build, just throwing on like added fire damage or something. There's some gems where that's not the case. I'm thinking like Flame Wall with Fortress is such a staple, especially like you slap that with SRS. Like, what build isn't doing that? If they're playing Flame Wall at all, or like if you're using Blink, it feels like Blink is only ever a weapon swap kind of thing, or you're doing one of those weird like Jungron builds that's breaking the game and probably getting nerfed.
Infinite life recovery, and it's probably the best build I'll ever play in Path of Exile 2.
You really got to respect the self-awareness here for him to already future-proof it, knowing this is going to get nerfed and nothing will likely ever exist like this in the game ever again. But I mean, yeah, sure enough, like, look at the gameplay. This is pretty freaking broke. What I'm trying to say is I actually like how they've made support gems more specialized, less generic, less like, oh, here's just support gems. Just pick 5 generic ones that work for your build and give you damage and you're good. I like that they're more conditional. I think they just need to keep committing down that line. Yeah.
The PO1 system of like your supports just make you do more damage also obviously feels good. We've been using it for 12 years. It's been good. But this current in-between...
Does it, though? Does it feel good if you're making the same decisions every single time? Does it?
Between thing just creates these really annoying scenarios where I want to use multiple active skills and I can't because there aren't support gems for it. Like, I'm sitting there on a 5 link and getting a 6 link wouldn't matter because there's not a support gem that works that actually helps me. And it's like, that feels really weird. And maybe...
I don't know if I agree with him on this because I don't know. I'd have to think about that for a while. I do see what he's saying. Hey, Gemlin Legionnaire doesn't have this problem as much if you pick that ascendancy point, but I see where he's coming from, where if you do... First of all, this kind of deflates something that he said earlier, though, where a lot of the meta builds are just pushing one button anyways, so you only need that one support gem for that ability. Unless... Well, no, because like a lot of meta builds, they'll use like multiple skills to prep their one button against a boss to make that one shot really powerful. But even in that case, like, I'm getting within a tangent. I don't think he, or I shouldn't say anything. Like, I'm not trying to criticize Ben's perspective on this. It's more so the case that I'm trying to add my own or inject my own here and just say that I don't think that I don't think they're entirely missing the mark with the support gem system. I just think it needs more flesh. Like, they need to commit more in one direction as to what they want to do with it.
maybe as they add more active gems to the game, that'll be better. If they also add more supports, but like I don't know if they will. We'll see if they will. Oh shit, the mana cost. Wait, I'm not even gonna bother. I'm not gonna bother. The funniest thing was when Karm was bitching in guild chat, he got like an insane weapon, super good weapon, like fucking 700 top end plus 7, and his Hammer of the Gods costs more mana than his character had. Oh fuck. Maybe in 5 years. I just want quarterly updates for this game, and maybe port back the gem system, but without the one support gem on it.
Sure. I at least, and I think other players as well, want the option to not have to equip a mana flask and also trade that for some power in a different direction and build our entire character around that if we want to. If that means picking up more mana regen nodes, more mana leech nodes, or just mana leech nodes in general, or if this means like reducing the cost of our skills, mana cost. I don't know. It's just something that I think players want to do. I think a lot of players just have that preferred playstyle of like, I never want to have to deal with mana at a certain point in my player's progression. And right now, especially with having mana flask slat, flask slot dedicated to your character, it feels like they're kind of subtly encouraging you in the direction of managing your mana in a way. Like, if you're not, then you're never pushing your mana flask button, and it's a wasted mechanic, and you're kind of being inefficient in some way, because it's like you have all this extra mana you could be using on your character. Yeah, I think mana should be something that they allow players to build into automating and then feel better about, rather than just like taking a bunch of nodes on the tree that increase your mana regen, and then you feel like you're gimping your character because most other players are just actually pushing the mana flask button.
In 5 years, I just want quarterly updates for this game, and maybe port back the gem system, but without the one support gem on it.
Without the one support. Port back the gem system, but without the one support gem limit. Does he mean port back as in go back to PoE 1's skill gem system with levels? Or is he talking about go back to the skill gem system that was announced at the very beginning of PoE 2's like life cycle as a game that was going in like before this game was in beta, there was an alpha, and back then PoE 2 didn't tell us that we would have a cap on support gems that we could equip to all of the 6 links we'd have available to us. Is that what he's referring? Is that that's probably what he's referring to.
Genuinely, the thing that I've been most excited for since fucking 2020 when they announced that shit. Like, that gem system has so much more potential than this one does. I don't like its current, like, the way it currently works, but like, it could be so good, especially in the campaign. Like, God, dude, gems in the campaign are so fucking bad in Path of Exile 1. Like, you just wear, like, your Act 1 3 link for 4 acts, then you wear your Act 3 4 link for 10 acts, because, like, you don't have currency manipulating tools for your sockets until you're in maps, and it's, like, it's so dog shit in the campaign. Like, that gem system plus new ascendancies, what a beautiful world it could have been. I don't like the investment you have to do on a single gem in PoE 2. So one thing that feels kind of weird about that right now, it feels like the drop rate and the whole way the gem system works would make more sense if you instead 6-linked your character slot, not the gem itself. But the problem with that is you can't trade that. So like, as soon as you consume that thing, you can't trade it, which I'm pretty sure is why it doesn't work that way. Be consumable.
I think what he's saying is, if instead of having all of these different gems that we have to individually socket, what if our character had one, like, you're at 2 sockets now, you're at 3 sockets now, you're at 4 links, you're at 5 links now, and we just added to that, and once that was filled out, we're complete? Is that and then he's now immediately double backing on that, playing devil's advocate against that, saying, well, maybe they wouldn't want to go in that direction because then you can't trade away your character's bound sockets. So those gems that, you know, they would have no inherent meaning like they do now, where if I 6-link a level 19 summon skeletons or something like that, like that's going to have value to somebody else on trade.
Yeah, but like, things being tradable is very important to them. It always has been. Like, you make a good item, you can then trade it later. You 6-link that item, you can still trade it later. So like, the gem itself being the thing that gets 6-linked makes sense, because then you can trade it later if you want to.
Trade it, exactly.
But the downside of that is like, the ability to test different skills is kind of limited as soon as you're in the end game, because if you...
I will say I didn't experience pain as much as I thought I would with this. When I'm not trying to say that this isn't something to be annoyed by, because it was something that I was fearful of when I was getting into Endgame too. But I remember like I was playing the Arsonist build, and then I wanted to swap off that to the Snipers build, and I was like, God damn, that means I'm gonna have to get another 5-link, right? They're like 1 Exalt on trade. Probably doesn't apply to every gem, probably doesn't apply to every level 20 gem, probably doesn't apply to every level 20 6-link gem, but at least for my needs at that time, I remember not feeling a significant amount of friction. So I just want to point that out.
And you kind of like are like, wait, now I want to test this other one that's thematically similar but not quite the same. In this game, you can just swap your gems and your thing, but in that game you can't, because like the gem itself is the 5-link. I don't really know what that's a bad thing though, but I also generally play the game with pretty, like, I plan out everything I'm gonna do very far in advance, so like I don't really run into the negatives of that. I feel like in the campaign you can easily like test 3 links and 4 links constantly and test new skills, and by the time
it's important to note though that his ability to plan things out is, you know, partially because he is so good at the game and is a known player, or it's because he's so good at the game, people know him because of that. What I'm trying to say though is, like, Ben can do that, you can't if you're new to PoE 2. So your desire to want to test things out and swap them around is going to be higher, and PoE 2, especially during the campaign, does, in my opinion, a better job of letting you swap around your skill gems and test around with them. Like, miles better, right? Not having to worry about chromes. I mean, get out of here. Like, it's a night and day difference. And jewelers too, for that matter. Sorry, you don't have to worry about jewelers in the same way in PoE 2 as you do in PoE 1, where, you know, jewelers in PoE 1, you use them on items, and so you're going through the campaign, you're trying to upgrade your gear if you're on a new tune or a fresh league, and you're picking up gear off the ground. for the first time, and that gear, it rolls 2 blue, 1 green. Okay, go. I'm good for light locust mines for a bit. Then I drop a better chest or a better weapon, and it's like red, green, blue, and it's like, okay, I guess that's an extra chrome, because the vendor recipe, but I can't use that. Yeah.
I don't really know if that's a bad thing though, but I also generally play the game with pretty, like, I plan out everything I'm gonna do very far in advance. So like,
you again, not everyone can do that. I hate to go
constantly
back.
and testing skills, and by the time you get a 5 link, you should like kind of know what you want, I guess. I don't know. But if you 5 link a shit skill, can it actually sell? I haven't looked at trade markets and whatnot. And can essences please drop 100 rarity mapping views 1 for 2 days? I did 100 rarity mapping for like 10 days playtime and didn't drop a single one. I actually had the 154 rarity for 10 days playtime farming breach with rares. I got 1 perfect 6 link on like day 2 on a no rarity character, and I got my last one like a day before I stopped playing. But I think that was just unlucky. Like most people that I saw had better RNG there. Like fucking Alk rolled hardcore self found and had 2 in like a day. And he's just better. Oh, also one other good thing to talk about instead of only talking about the bad things. The breach boss is fucking sick. That boss is really good. And Arbiter phase 2 is pretty sick too. I'm so surprised.
I'm a noob. I can't actually piggyback off his comments on those respects because I didn't even get to those boss fights. But I don't know. I mean, maybe that's another mark on this game is I don't know if he's going to talk about that, but the sets that you need to, and they did patch this. I'll give them this. They patched this. Maybe they made this significantly easier to, they definitely did. They at least made it easier to find the citadels. But pathing to them might still be something that takes like a week's worth of in-game time before you actually acquire all the sets and get your atlas to the point where it's near one of the citadels. I don't know, haven't experienced it in-game, but that was definitely a pain point to PoE 2's endgame. I know that I wouldn't even have had a character strong enough to be able to take on those encounters, but I couldn't even get to at least the Arbiter because I never found a citadel, never found any of the set pieces. And the Breach boss, if I had interacted with Breach more, I probably would have saw it.
It's for how little changes
probably would have died to it.
Though. Like that's the thing that really stands out to me. For an EA game, like there's just like so little being changed. I feel like they're afraid to nerf things because they know when they fix the current broken ass builds, people are gonna be mad. But you got.
So I think he's saying that he's saying this in a very like current year or day where this is like after the 4 or 5 nerfs that GGG's done to each of Jungron's builds, right? So like now they're very scared to nerf things. Now they are, or as of the last month, because they were so unpopular when they were nerfing things originally at the beginning of the game's launch. I almost feel like they I don't know. I didn't play D4, so I shouldn't even say we, but like some of us maybe experienced whiplash, some of us not being me, where in D4's launch, I remember they had a big problem where they were nerfing things. The devs were nerfing things as the game's meta was still getting settled and the game was still fresh. And it was very unpopular. PoE 2 content creators like Subtractem made videos talking about how unpopular or how unfun and how much they hated the nerfs back then. So maybe PoE 2 had its own little D4 moment in the very beginning of its game lifespan that is kind of getting swept under the rug a little bit. Not swept under the rug. Sorry, Ben's pointing it out, but in a way that they're afraid to nerf things now because they over nerfed back then, and now they're in a weird like we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't situation.
I don't think waiting is good. Like when they do the reset, it's gonna or like when they do the nerfs, it's gonna be with an economy reset, which is like obviously the ideal solution for a finished game. That's how it always should be in a finished game. But I just feel like first impressions of like how a game plays is like really important. And if you just leave it for, I mean, we're coming up on 2 months, and we don't even have a date yet for Druid Huntress. So like, is it gonna be 3 months before the first reset? And if so, like 3 months of combat being like what I have to assume is nowhere near where they want it to be. There's no way they're happy with the current combat in PoE 2. It's not even just Herald of Ice though. Like that's a big one, but like even non-Herald builds kind of do the same thing. Like Galvanic Arrow does the same thing. Lightning Arrow without Herald of Ice can do the same thing. It's a little bit weaker, but just like the general, like I just like they talked so much about combos, about like you're going to use multiple skills in PoE 2, and I haven't even come close. Like, I haven't played a single build that uses even half the amount of...
Good builds don't use combos. Good builds abuse a broken mechanic and push one button, if even that, to roll through maps, specifically breaches, and make money.
Skills that Path of Exile 1 uses. I played every single archetype. Like, I think the build that I played that has the most character input, in terms of, like, you press buttons to kill monsters, is Spark, which is like historically kind of considered to be a non-interactive playstyle. Like you just press a button and the whole screen gets covered in prod.
You don't even have to aim.
But somehow Spark from like a character input point of view, has been the most engaging combat of
That's
any of
interesting.
or
I
like
should
the
see
most
his build.
engaging while still being fun combat. Because it's pretty fucking engaging to get your shit pushed in by trash monsters that can push you across the screen.
I see what he's saying, though. He's saying Spark is such a hard build to play and make. Not hard, sorry. It's like low performing. And so because he's playing that build, even though it like, you know, doesn't really require a whole lot of thought to play, it just doesn't perform as well as the broken ones, and he has to like think a lot more about his positioning, because bosses aren't getting instantly deleted, and he actually is not like invincible.
What they want on a melee character that can't kill anything. It's pretty engaging. It's just not fun. Didn't play minions. I did play minions until Act 3. I played minions until Act 3, learned that when if you outrange them, they despawn and logged out.
Yeah.
But they fixed that, apparently, so I might try again,
Did
too.
they?
When they add specters, maybe I'll try minions again. We'll see.
Yeah, dude, no specters on launch was troll. They teased it in all the gameplay trailers, and if you're a minion player, you're gonna love that we totally changed the specters, and they didn't launch with specters. That's
326.
Come on.
How long this can go on YouTube? I don't know. I normally, like, the reason it's taking me like 2 months to really put it all into words is because I really don't like being negative. I want to enjoy things, but like, goddamn. And I just wanted to like wait, you know, and give them time to cook, time to change things and fix things. But it's been 2 fucking months, so who knows?
if you're not negative, things aren't ever gonna change.
Who knows?
Just happy about everything, then they think everything's all good. Path of Exile 1 exists and is in a really good state. Is that going to remain forever? Is this an opinion that he had after they announced that the League was going to remain in development for another year? Yeah, I don't know. I do know. Those are my thoughts. That's my reaction to Ben. I love you all. GG's.